Welcome to join us for this morning's show, my friend.
Great to be here.
Could you tell to the audience about this quarter of the crude oil in Texas?
Well, Caesar, it's been hot, really hot in Texas, temperature-wise, that is. And obviously, the heat in Texas has impacted somewhat oil production and oil refining. And it's almost amazing when I look back at the last month in Texas and we see the incredible heat, the record electricity consumption, that the refiners were still able to refine oil and gasoline at a near record pace. And one of the things that happens, when we have hot temperatures, the refineries aren't designed to operate at the same levels that they normally operate at. But somehow the refiners rose to the occasion to meet much better than expected demand around the globe. So you really have to hand it to them. But it's one of the reasons why we've seen such an impressive run up in crude oil, gasoline, and heating oil.
How are the bond market and the stock market in New York City?
New York, that incredible town, right? Stock market has been incredibly strong, and the bond market has been falling out of bed, especially if you're looking at bond futures, right? That chart has been straight down while yields have been up. The 30-year bonds have been in a very impressive bear market. And believe it or not, the yields in the U.S. has been a headwind for commodities, right? Because if the yields are high, the dollar is strong, that normally is a downward pressure on commodities. And so if you look at the bigger picture, what's been happening with the bond yields and the stock market, the stock market being strong suggests demand's going to be strong. There's a lot of fears that if it continues along that path, the Fed is going to have to take the punch bowl away, right? Give me that punch back, and then make the stock market go down. And that's the fear. But so far, the reports of the death of the stock market have been greatly exaggerated. And even though we've seen a little correction from the high, it continues to take a licking and keeps on ticking.
How about the Federal Reserve?
How about those guys at the Federal Reserve? I personally wish they'd be quiet, right? When they started talking about this transparent Federal Reserve, you would think it would be a good thing, but it drives me nuts, right? And what drives me nuts with these Fed speakers, right? You have one guy saying, "Oh, we're going to have to raise rates till the end of time," and the other guy saying, "Well, maybe things could be calmed down a little bit." And it's like, make up your mind, all right? We need one or two guys speaking. I think they like to hear themselves speak. Personally, I could be wrong, right? But I think some of these guys get paid pretty well, and I think the more they move the market, sometimes the bigger feather they put in their own cap. It's been crazy. But make no mistake about it, we're going to be focused on what the Fed officials are going to say in Jackson Hole. The big guy, the big dog is going to be speaking. Jerome Powell, you're going to have a lot of comments leading up to that. But the market almost seems like it's on hold, waiting to see, what the brain trust is going to say in Jackson Hole this week. I personally think they're going to have to come off a little bit dovish because there's still significant challenges. I mean, we've got U.S. banks getting downgraded. Who would have ever thought that would be possible in this modern age? But that's what's happening. In the U.S., credit rating's been downgraded by these guys. Listen, I mean, this is very frustrating. So I think they're going to have to be fairly not too aggressive here. Otherwise, they really put some risk here. If they come off too aggressive, then I think the markets are going to have some problems.
Yes, sir, big boss of the Federal Reserve. This decade is pretty simple scary.
Mm-hmm. It's been a very challenging time for the economy, and we know that while the stock market does good, you're right, it's scary for a lot of people. I mean, well, you're out there, you're in contact with the farmers, right? Um, Obviously, they've had challenges with their crops, with the drought and rain and other issues. But the other thing that's been a problem for them has been inflation, right? So you're right, it's been scary for these guys.
Yes.
And it's been very difficult, and they don't think they're getting the help in Washington, right? When you hear about Bidenomics and how good everything is. Oh, Bidenomics is doing great. Well, it may be doing great for the people in Washington, but the people out in the cornfields are not feeling the same way about the economy.
It's failure for us in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Caesar. And I think you speak for the middle of the country. You're in contact with people on the ground that live real lives, right? Not guys that white limos, in DC, from place to place. Say, I don't know. You may get an electric car one of these days. I'm not sure, but maybe I can see you in a limo, doing the limo thing. But that's not you. You're out there with the people. You're talking to them. They know this economy is not working. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's not going to make them feel better. And it's inflation. And I don't care what anybody says. Inflation is caused mainly by the government spending too much money. And then here you have the Federal Reserve trying to fix that by raising interest rates, putting pain on real people, making it unaffordable for a lot of people to get their first home, unaffordable to buy new farm equipment. You look at the default rate on loans that they're talking about. People are struggling, right? They're not buying into this situation, and they're not buying into the fact that the economy can't do better for them when we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine to fight a war. I mean, the people at home deserve better, and I think that that's going to be a major issue in this election.
That makes me really mad at this administration.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people are angry at this administration, and you have a right to be angry, right? They sold us a bill of goods, right? They told us they were going to make the economy better. They promised us green energy jobs. How's that going? They promised a flawless energy transition, right? So far we've seen a war against fossil fuels. We've seen them demonize the U.S. energy industry, calling them war profiteers and price gougers, and mom and pop gas stations. You're gouging at the gas pump. Give me a break. Don't tell me that when you killed the Keystone Pipeline, you put on drilling moratoriums, you're talking about more regulations, you're telling people not to invest in fossil fuels, and then you're wondering why prices are high. And this move to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is starting to backfire, and I think it's going to lead to higher prices down the road because it further discouraged investments. So I'm with you on that, Caesar. Absolutely.
Next questions before I am going to be more mad. What do you think about the commodity markets with fuel economy in the future?
This is, the $1 million question. And the thing is that you have this administration telling people, oh, we're not going to need, fossil fuel cars, right? Everybody should be driving an electric car. Gas prices go up. It's your fault because you didn't buy an electric car, right? And the concern that I'm seeing is that this demonization of fossil fuels and these false promises of the green evolution, when I see them, killing, natural gas pipelines and, banning buildings that are powered by natural gas, one of the cleanest fossil fuels in the world. And when I hear them coming for your stove and they're coming for your, household appliances, I mean, I just shake my head in disbelief. And so I think because we have a lack of vision by this administration, a lack of a plan for a transition, only these, piecemeal, dictates from the Biden administration. We're going to do this. We're going to tax this. We're going to kill this pipeline. We're going to put on this regulation. We're going to build more wind farms and solar, regardless of the fact if they work or not. It doesn't matter. Or give money to Detroit to build electric cars that nobody wants, that ends up in a landfill in a couple of years. I mean, what kind of madness is this? This isn't a plan. Well, it is a plan if you want disaster. It's a great plan for disaster. So I think the problem is we're going to be undersupplied for oil and gas for years to come. And we need to step back from the madness and get back to reality. Everybody cares about the climate and all that good stuff, but we got to do it in a way where it doesn't kill the poor and the middle class while we're at it.
Yes. However, we are going to be in shows.
I think, chaos is the word. I agree. Maybe they want chaos. There's even talk that they want to take special messages. We're going to declare a climate emergency, similar like a COVID emergency, where we're going to give the government unlimited power to come and take your car or make you stay home or make you take a train or a bus. You got it. When you hear crazy stuff like that, it makes you wonder if they just want to take total control of your lives. Is this about the environment or is it about controlling you? It's because it's been a failure for the environment, right? We're not seeing greenhouse gas emissions being really pulled back by these policies. We're just seeing them being offshored to countries that produce more fossil greenhouse gas emissions. Do you think China's going to step up to the plate and jump on board here? No, they're looking at this as a strategic advantage to advance their economy and make them a more powerful superpower so they can compete with the US. And we're sitting here with our thumb up our nose saying, okay, guys, we're going to destroy our economic growth. We're going to put our manufacturers at a disadvantage. We're going to, create these green energy jobs that don't exist. And that's not to say there isn't good green energy. There is, but the way the government is trying to mandate stuff, and picking winners and losers and friends and enemies, it's not going to work.
Help to Ukraine on Russia. China is next empire.
Well, that's what China wants. China wants to rule the world. And, they're not making a secret of it. They've written books, about their 100-year plan. They're playing the long game to try to assume control of the globe. Whether they can do it or not is whether or not we decide to let them do it, right? And we have to have real leadership that can stand up to China. We have to have real leadership that stands up for human rights. We have to have real leadership that really, allows our economy to prosper. And it isn't by draconian green energy rules, in an attempt to save the planet, when the reality is that a lot of these steps they've taken is only going to serve to make people more poor and put them in poverty. There's a better way. Listen, the United States, when you allow the free market, you can encourage a free market from the government, but let them do their thing, right? Let them pick the winners and losers, and you're going to get a lot further than what you're doing. Now, some people say the government needs to give money to support some of these programs. Okay, I get that. But at the same time, have a plan. Just don't throw a bunch of money at stuff and say, oh, we'll try a little of this, try a little of this. We're gonna, I mean, you listen to the automakers, not one of them would be putting this type of money into electric cars if they weren't getting money from the government. And I've spoken to a lot of people who bought electric cars. They kind of like the electric cars. They would never have bought them unless they were getting a government subsidy. So does the government plan on subsidizing this forever? You know, and, you know, I spoke to somebody who just bought a Tesla, beautiful car, oh, gorgeous. I'm like, well, how do you like it so far? Do you have any range and anxiety? And he goes, well, only once. Had to go to downtown Chicago. We had to find a power station. In Chicago, they're all around. But then he had to wait, you know, half an hour, to fill up. And, you know, I mean, that's, you know, people don't realize that makes the economy less effective. And, you know, if you're joyriding and hey, you're retired, that's great. But if, you know, if you're a salesman and you have to get from point A to point B, or if you have an appointment with work, it's not the most efficient way to do business. Yeah. 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 Why don't they raise production? Because OPEC feels a couple things. Number one, they feel that the Biden administration messed up the market by releasing oil from the strategic reserve. That artificially lowered prices. It cost OPEC money. It also discouraged investment in oil. So they think they're trying to fix the market by withholding oil from the market, in part to get the market fixed so we start producing enough oil to meet demand. And sadly, right now, that's not going to be happening the second half of the year, according to OPEC.